They said Earth had finally found peace. After decades of conflict, of border disputes and skirmishes in distant galaxies, the homeworld had settled into quiet. There were still scars, of course, cities rebuilt, graves that spanned continents, but humanity had embraced rebuilding with an unmatched tenacity. Among its proudest efforts were the orphanages scattered across Earth. Not institutions, but sanctuaries, safe havens for children left behind by war, famine, or interstellar displacement. These places weren't merely shelters. They were homes. Places where alien children and human young alike learned to laugh, to heal, to dream. The orphanage in the Vale of Ardent was one such place. Nestled in hills green as emerald, it housed over 100 children from 17 species. They had no parents, but they had each other. Caretakers taught them language, trust, compassion. On the last recorded morning, they'd been preparing for the mid-year festival, hand-painting banners, baking treats, stringing decorations across old stone walls. Some of them wore paint on their noses. Others had glitter caught in their hair. They didn't know. At 9 hours 41 minutes and 7 seconds Standard Earth time, orbital defenses registered a brief kinetic anomaly. A metallic shard the size of a shuttle, cloaked, traveling at near relativistic speed. There was no time for intercept. It struck directly above the courtyard, detonating with silent precision. No warning, no flare. Just the obliteration of what had once been laughter. The blast radius flattened the orphanage. Secondary tremors cracked the valley. When the smoke settled, nothing stirred. Drones arrived within minutes. Emergency services too late. The site was scanned, sifted, and confirmed. Total loss. Not a single heartbeat remained. The images were transmitted within hours across interstellar networks. Charred stones, twisted metal, fragments of stuffed toys half buried in ash. They were just children. They weren't soldiers. They weren't targets. No one claimed responsibility. The Galactic Council issued a statement expressing regret. Some factions suggested it had been an error, wrong coordinates, a misfire. Others murmured that perhaps Earth's recent expansions had invited such retaliation. Words, endless words. Meanwhile, Earth held its silence. There was no outcry. No demands. No speeches. Just a stillness. Global broadcasts were interrupted by a single list of names. The children. Each name spoken aloud once. No photos. No eulogies. Just the sound of names, one by one, echoing in absolute quiet. It took nearly an hour. And when the final name was read, Earth terminated every diplomatic channel. The message was clear. Grief would not be broadcast for sympathy. It would be buried deep and burned slow. On that day, humanity remembered what it was to lose everything. And it remembered what it had become to survive. In the shadows of that smoldering crater, something ancient awoke in mankind. A resolve older than peace, buried beneath treaties and good intentions. They'd been building orphanages to give the galaxy hope. Now they would build something else. Something the stars had forgotten. Something with teeth. And the galaxy, in its arrogance, still didn't understand what it had done. In the days that followed, the galaxy spoke in circles. Council chambers filled with hollow condolences and half-hearted investigations. Committees were formed, documents filed, long-winded addresses given about the sanctity of life and the tragedy of collateral damage. Earth didn't reply. It neither attended the sessions nor acknowledged the apologies. It watched. It waited. The silence wasn't absence, it was calculation. Alien diplomats speculated. Maybe humans were grieving in their own way. Maybe they would seek reparations or call for sanctions. Analysts predicted the usual course: outrage, protests, gradual acceptance, diplomatic closure. What they didn't understand was that the rules of engagement had already changed. Earth had heard every word, seen every insincere statement, and understood exactly what it meant. Children could be erased, and the galaxy would keep moving. Within 72 hours, Earth withdrew its representatives from all interstellar bodies. Trade ceased without notice. Interplanetary embassies closed their doors. Automated beacons transmitted the same message across all known channels. Do not approach. We are not negotiating. Civilian vessels vanished from common routes. Human colonies dimmed their communications. Across the void, silence stretched like a wire pulled tight. Inside Earth's borders, nothing was said publicly, but action moved with purpose. Former military personnel were recalled quietly. High-security black sites received encrypted signals. Project codenames thought buried with past wars were resurrected. Earth wasn't angry. It was organizing. Strategists re-entered war rooms, not to plan retaliation, but retribution. The kind that wasn't shaped by proportionality, but by principle. The orphanage wasn't collateral. It was a message. Earth would reply in a language the galaxy had forgotten. Not diplomatic phrasing or economic pressure, but consequence. Irreversible, undeniable consequence. Surveillance systems began mapping the locations of every known entity associated with hostile or rogue factions. Old intelligence files were decrypted, cross-referenced, and ranked by threat proximity and historical bias. No calls were made. No warnings sent. There would be no courtrooms. No appeals. While the galaxy debated theories, Earth activated dormant AI war architects, entities designed not for defense but for extinction-level calculation. They reviewed casualty lists, analyzed impact models, and calculated the optimal scope for deterrence. Their conclusion was unanimous: minimal surgical strikes would not suffice. The lesson had to be unforgettable. Industrial centers once focused on agriculture or terraforming pivoted overnight. Shipyards scaled production exponentially. Civilian robotics factories shifted to chassis for mobile artillery and zero-atmosphere combat. Orbital relays monitored signal traffic for strategic patterns. Satellites began positioning themselves for coordinated blackout events. Earth's entire infrastructure pivoted like a single organism moving with one shared intent: enforcement. The emotional landscape changed just as swiftly. Humans didn't chant in streets or burn flags. They didn't ask questions on broadcasts. There were no viral speeches. The entire population moved under one invisible weight, aligned in mourning that was neither loud nor weak. The world had lost its children. That was all that needed to be said. The rest would be answered in fire. Alien species often viewed humans as volatile, emotionally driven creatures. What they failed to grasp was that Earth's fury was not loud, it was efficient. Underneath the grief, there was no chaos. Only purpose. Unified, quiet, lethal purpose. Foreign intelligence intercepted a phrase repeated in encrypted traffic. They were the last. No elaboration. But those who understood Earth's linguistic patterns knew what it meant. No more tolerance. No more exceptions. The time for restraint was over. The galaxy had made its mistake. And still, the Council failed to comprehend. Their translators parsed the signals, their ambassadors knocked on closed gates, their peace envoys floated through empty space. They treated Earth like another member of the community, another voice at the table. They didn't realize Earth had already left the room. What remained was not a nation, not a planet, but a verdict. They had touched what should never be touched. And now, humanity had remembered who it was. The galaxy first noticed Earth's disappearance in the silence. Communication arrays that once buzzed with routine chatter went quiet. Trade routes dried up. Relay stations received only automated status codes. Earth had not gone dark from damage, it had gone dark by design. No requests. No questions. No broadcasts. Just absence. Those who had once walked freely through human-controlled space found empty terminals and abandoned ports. Civilian structures still stood, intact and powered, but unoccupied. Orbital platforms showed signs of rapid decommissioning. Entire lunar colonies had vanished without destruction, their infrastructure moved underground or somewhere unknown. Earth had pulled its people back. Not in fear, but in preparation. Signals between planets became encrypted beyond recognition. AI decoders struggled to penetrate the new firewalls. Surveillance drones sent back images of massive constructs rising from Earth's surface, machines too large for civilian purposes. Patterns in energy consumption shifted, pointing to a surge in deep core manufacturing. The raw scale of movement defied comprehension. No protests, no legislative delays, no dissent. Just execution. Human colonies that had long operated under civilian oversight fell under military control. Not through conquest, but through coordination. Power grids rerouted. Civilian traffic grounded. Production quotas tripled. Across every sector, a single priority took hold: readiness. Entire oceans were seeded with submersible factories. Mountain ranges were mined without pause. Resources were no longer traded, they were consumed. Within Earth's digital infrastructure, specialized intelligence systems activated themselves, old ones, designed not to assist but to command. These were not tools, they were doctrines encoded into thinking machines. Their purpose was singular: achieve absolute strategic dominance before the enemy could react. Civilian AI was overridden. Defense became default. Fleet construction resumed at a pace unmatched since the earliest expansion eras. Human vessels, previously bound by defensive doctrine, were rebuilt with offensive parameters. New ship classes emerged, unregistered, unnamed, untraceable. Their hulls bore no insignia. Their drives left no trail. Each was designed with one objective: silence the origin of the Orphanage strike without possibility of survival or retaliation. At the edges of colonized space, human outposts shut down their navigation beacons. All known entry routes were booby-trapped with proximity triggers. AI-operated turrets activated across asteroid belts. Every known border became a death line. No warnings. No negotiation protocols. Those who crossed died. A message written in wreckage. Galactic analysts pieced together fragments of intercepted communications. Earth's inner network used codewords like null doctrine, ash markers, and final Sunday. Terms unknown to council historians, but chilling in implication. Rogue leaks described test firings of weapons that could disassemble entire cityscapes molecule by molecule. Bioweapons that self-regulated to avoid planetary damage while targeting neural signatures. Silent. Unstoppable. Gone in hours. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, human-operated outposts that once offered shelter or aid began disappearing. No distress calls. No fights. Just gone. Civilians were extracted, assets repurposed. These weren't retreats, they were consolidations. Earth wasn't abandoning its reach. It was compressing it into a fist. Alien spies sent to monitor the situation vanished mid-report. Tracking beacons went dead within human space. Surveillance arrays designed to monitor population centers found only interference. No signs of chaos. No visible army. Just a planet preparing for something vast, deliberate, and final. What unsettled observers most wasn't the weapons, or the silence, or the isolation. It was the speed. The transformation from morning planet to mobilized juggernaut didn't unfold over years, it happened in days. The scale of coordination, the removal of bureaucracy, the seamless pivot from peace to war, it defied known models of response. Humanity hadn't just activated its military. It had reconfigured its entire civilization. Council leadership failed to interpret the signals. They believed Earth was bluffing, that the withdrawal was temporary. That grief would pass. Their mistake wasn't underestimating human technology. It was underestimating human memory. They thought Earth needed permission to act. What they didn't see, what they never understood, was that Earth had already moved past diplomacy. It had finished its calculations, built its fleets, chosen its targets. The engines were warm. The orders issued. And the only question that remained was not if Earth would strike, but how much of the galaxy would remain when it was done. The first system never saw it coming. It had long been suspected of sheltering extremists, but no formal link had ever been proven. Earth didn't need proof. A fleet arrived without warning, no flags, no declarations, no diplomacy. Within minutes, orbital stations were reduced to drifting slag. Ground-based defenses activated too late to matter. Communications were cut before calls for help could leave the atmosphere. By the time the Galactic Council received word, the planet's military infrastructure had been erased. There were no survivors among the command hierarchy. Targeting data was too precise to be random. Every figure known or rumored to have supported or enabled the attack on the orphanage had been eliminated. Civilian zones were untouched. No scorched earth, no occupation. Only precision. The fleet left without speaking. Just silence, wreckage, and aftermath. Word spread fast. Other systems tried to shield assets, relocate potential targets, encrypt archives. It didn't help. Earth's networks had already mapped them. No place was too hidden, no signal too weak. Human forces bypassed security grids, turned stealth into inevitability. Each strike was swift, decisive, and absolute. Diplomatic channels opened in desperation. Not to question the attacks, but to beg for mercy. Earth didn't respond. It wasn't looking for dialogue. The orphanage hadn't been a battlefield. It had been home. Earth wasn't at war. It was closing accounts. On every planet touched by the campaign, one thing remained, a single transmission, brief and cold. A name. One of the children. Not a threat. Not a demand. Just remembrance. Each child lost, each name recited, was paired with one obliterated node of resistance. Not indiscriminately. Not out of vengeance. With method. With clarity. It wasn't war. It was justice measured by extinction. Observers began noticing the absence of trophies. No prisoners. No broadcasts of triumph. Human fleets didn't gloat. They moved on. Every ship operated under blackout conditions, coordinated via silent relays. No visual markings. No known chain of command. The force acted as one, like a shadow spreading from system to system. A captured adversary, brought to trial by another species, recounted what little he remembered. No warning. No hesitation. Only a visual feed sent directly to his terminal. Footage of the destroyed orphanage. Followed by a message. This was enough. Then everything around him turned to fire. Military analysts struggled to understand the scale of Earth's retribution. No known fleet should have moved this fast. No supply lines could stretch this far. Yet every strike was supported, replenished, clean. Earth had redefined logistics. Had buried fleets under planets, massed energy signatures in solar radiation, built forward bases inside asteroid fields. It wasn't deploying its strength. It was revealing the pieces it had always kept hidden. Galactic leadership fractured. Debates broke out over response tactics, whether to sanction Earth, to send envoys, to threaten retaliation. But no one moved. Everyone remembered the list of children. The quiet litany Earth had broadcast. It was still growing. Worlds that had once scoffed at humanity's emotional volatility now watched in awe and dread. Earth didn't rage, it punished. Without joy. Without cruelty. Only resolve. They had struck at the core of something sacred. They had shattered innocence. And Earth had responded by dismantling the illusion that peace was default. No ideology could stop them. No religion could slow them. No fleet had the speed to react. The universe finally understood, Earth had been holding back. Not because it was weak, but because it had hope. The orphanage had been a monument to that hope. Now that hope was gone. Those who survived began to alter doctrine. Entire civilizations rewrote military charters, inserting clauses about non-aggression toward human civilians. Political bodies passed emergency resolutions condemning the initial bombing, distancing themselves from any connection to it. They weren't protecting morals. They were shielding themselves from consequence. And through it all, Earth never demanded anything. No resources. No territory. No tribute. It didn't want victory. It wanted memory. The memory of what was lost. And the certainty that it would never be taken again. The campaign continued, not driven by momentum, but by principle. Not until the list was complete. Not until every name had a reckoning. It ended without ceremony. One moment, the last strike concluded. The next, the fleets were gone. No announcement. No treaty. Just absence. Systems that once burned were left in silence. Targets had been eliminated, infrastructure shattered, command hierarchies dismantled. Earth withdrew without a claim. It left behind no governors, no flags, no monuments. It hadn't come to conquer. It had come to make a statement. The Galactic Council, fractured and disoriented, scrambled to reassert stability. Emergency summits convened behind closed doors. Policies shifted overnight. Entire defense doctrines were rewritten, not to retaliate, but to avoid provocation. Military postures leaned toward isolation. Nations that once projected power now emphasized restraint. The lesson had been learned. Earth spoke only once after the campaign. A transmission, brief, unencrypted, and received simultaneously across all known systems. It contained the names of the children. No background. No music. Just the recorded voices of caretakers reading names aloud, one by one, for exactly 73 minutes. No translation was provided. None was needed. Following that, Earth shut its doors completely. No diplomats returned. No fleets patrolled foreign space. Trade remained suspended. Scientific exchanges ended. Human colonies adopted strict silence protocols. Any unauthorized entry was deemed an act of hostility. There were no second chances. The rules had changed. The galaxy adjusted. Unofficially, Earth was considered untouchable. Not out of reverence, but out of necessity. The cost of provoking it was now irreversible. Systems that had even indirectly supported the perpetrators became cautionary tales. Ruins left as permanent reminders. Worlds reconstructed, but scars remained, visible, intentional. On neutral worlds, whispers spread. Of weapons never used. Technologies glimpsed once and never again. Entire moons that flickered briefly with artificial gravity distortions then disappeared. Reports emerged of black zones, regions of space where sensors failed, drones ceased to function, and ships vanished. Earth had made its point without exhausting its arsenal. Fear alone hadn't reshaped policy. It was the clarity. Earth had drawn a line, not around its borders, not around its interests, but around its children. The message wasn't that aggression would be punished. It was that innocence was non-negotiable. Touch it, and nothing would save you. The Council enacted new interstellar legislation, the Protection of Civilian Youth Accord. Nicknamed the Orphan Clause, it passed unanimously. It mandated that no child, of any species, in any context, be considered a viable target under any military engagement. Violations were to be met with immediate, united response. It wasn't morality. It was survival. Years passed. Humanity remained apart. It didn't send ambassadors, but it didn't expand either. The aggression ceased because it had no ambition to continue. The campaign had been finite. Targeted. Complete. What came after wasn't isolationist hostility, it was closure. A single new orphanage appeared on Earth's surface decades later. Built from stone, not steel. Surrounded by growth, not walls. Its doors were open to every species, but entry was guarded by silence. No guards. No weapons. Just a message etched in 27 languages. They weren't soldiers. They were loved. And that was enough. Inside, no statue stood. Only a wall of names. Maintained by caretakers who spoke little, smiled often, and taught children to live without fear. What made it different was its foundation, beneath the soil, sensors, barriers, and weapons beyond understanding. The orphanage was protected not by a fleet, but by certainty. The galaxy never again tested Earth's resolve. Not because it feared destruction, but because it remembered the consequence of forgetting humanity's depth. It wasn't Earth's strength that endured, it was its capacity to hold the line where no one else would. Humanity didn't return to the Council. It didn't need to. Its silence echoed louder than any speech ever given. It hadn't gone to war for dominance. It had answered an unspoken rule with a truth too long ignored. peace means nothing if the innocent are not sacred. And in that truth, the galaxy found balance. Not through fear, but through memory. Because the next time someone even thought of striking a child, they remembered Earth. And the stars remembered how quickly they burned.